It's a wet, late summer day in Noxon. The three grassy lots where most of the town's businesses once stood are partially cordoned off with yellow tape. A pickup truck is parked in front of the trailer that now houses a diminished Angry Beaver general store. But Noxon Avenue, the community's main drag, is otherwise quiet. Before February 27, 2024, the short stretch of road was home to four storefronts: the Angry Beaver, the Mercantile and Cafe, and Toby's Tavern, a Noxon fixture beloved across northwest Montana. Now only Johnson Hardware, just across Broadway Street from the other storefronts, remains. The loss is palpable, even to someone new to town. Standing on the edge of Noxon Avenue, hearing only a dog bark and wind chimes tinkle, a sense of stillness immediately envelops you. I had only been in Sanders County for a few days, and had no idea if Noxon was always a quiet town. Tourist season was winding down, and hunting season was just peeking over the horizon. Maybe it was just shoulder season in an unincorporated town. So I asked Laura Johnson, who with her husband Kevin owns Johnson Hardware, if I was missing anything.
It's definitely quieter. You don't, because you don't have the people just, I'm going to stop by the store and grab this or that. They got the trailer in, and that is, they've done very well with that. There's a lot in there for what it is. Yeah. But it's quieter.
Laura grew up in nearby Heron, her family having moved there from Seattle when she was 2 years old. She and Kevin met going to school together. They married in 1995 and had two sons, and in 2001 they bought the store. The boys, now in their 20s, returned to Noxon after college and worked at the family store when they're not busy with their own adventures.
We were the high school sweetheart thing, so yeah, no, it's been good. It's good to raise the kids here, and, it's a great place to be.
The hardware store remains busy, the waves of customers coming in cycles determined by the workday and season, Laura tells me. Contractors arrive first thing, and by mid-morning business is steady. When I talked to her, the temperatures were just beginning to dip, a reminder for a lot of people that time was running short on getting their projects done before winter. Noxon is like that too. The regional school just down the street from the hardware store still draws people into town, Laura says. But the absence of the three stores, particularly Toby's, remains felt. Life goes on, sure. But when I asked Laura how much Noxon has transformed over the years she's lived there, she said the small things might change, but not the big ones.
I went to high school and through fourth grade all the way through high school here, and you always had your store. You always had, it was just, you always had those businesses there. There's been some that have come and gone, obviously, but those were kind of your stable things. Those were always going to be there. They were. So it was a shock. It's kind of, it was sad to see that happen. Yeah.
The fire that likely began in the Angry Beaver in the early morning hours of February 27, 2024, was visible across the Clark Fork River when volunteer firefighters with the Noxon Rural Fire District arrived. It quickly spread to the Mercantile and Cafe and Toby's Tavern, which were nestled closely on either side. Despite crews from Heron and Trout Creek pitching in, all three buildings were a pile of wreckage by mid-morning when the fire was finally contained. As bad as the blaze was, it was only the first of two hits Noxon took that year. In mid-July, inspectors looking over the Noxon Bridge, the more than a century-old span that connects the town to Montana 200 across the river, deemed it unsafe for travel. Roadblocks went up and emergency vehicles were rerouted across the top of the Noxon Dam. For everyone else, getting in and out of town meant taking poorly maintained back roads to Heron. But when I ask around town about the year's setbacks, people turn back to the fire. Maybe it's because temporary repairs allowed the bridge to open back up to traffic shortly after it closed, though its future remains very much in doubt. But it might be that the storefronts along Noxon Avenue were more than just a place to grab a drink, some sugar, or a bite to eat.
This chain of little towns, it's just like any chain of little towns. Your bars are your supper clubs and your social centers. If you, in the outlying areas, like you want to break the monotony, just where you come to shoot pool, have a beer, see your friends, see your friends or whatever, So they perform a service, and this is the part that Noxon lost, is their social center. And I've been waiting to see if it's going to have an impact psychologically on whether start feuding and fighting a little more. And all of this stuff could play in. So I ain't talking too much about it. I'm just kind of watching to see if it does have an effect.
That's Billy Hill. I met him while I was making phone calls ahead of my trip from Kalispell to Noxon after a colleague said I needed to give him a ring. When I asked him how the town was doing after the fire and the bridge closure, he said I should just come down and stay a night or two at the hunting lodge on his ranch outside of Trout Creek. Billy Hill is the quintessential Montanan. Straight out of Central Casting, he sports a big Santa Claus-like white beard and bright blue eyes belying his 7 decades on this earth. A brimmed hat fixed to his head and thick blue jeans strapped to his legs. Somehow both gregarious and soft-spoken, but blunt in the way that some men in the West talk. He's been a lot of things: a soldier, rancher, guide, candidate for sheriff, and, back in his younger years, a magazine model for a line of boots. He fought the government after he killed a grizzly bear in self-defense, and won. He also punched out the Sanders County Sheriff once during a bar brawl. The sheriff was out of line, he recalls. A fact that I just had to try and verify after I returned to the office. Sure enough, the Daily Interlake ran an article on it in the 1990s.
Yeah, I'm Billy Hill, and I'm 77 years old. I've lived in Trout Creek, Montana all my entire life. I've been on my ranch since I was 1 year old, 1948. I've worked my entire life to make the ranch. I'm proud of it, what it has become. We just got done with an ice lodge. We have an outfitting business, a ranch. We sell hay. I try to support my community in any way I can. And I kind of run out of words at the moment, but anyway, that's about who I am.
These days, Billy still works as a guide during hunting season. He hosts friends and weddings in his hunting lodge and cares for the herd of elk that roam his land. But he also likes to pop into town for meals and a night of dancing. If you tag along with him, you realize that everyone knows Billy, and he knows everyone else, and most everybody gets together at one of the handful of bars and restaurants that dot the clusters of homes strung out along the highway running from Sanders County into Idaho.
They are. They're your hub. They're the hub of the community. For business, recreation, romance. They're the hub.
Billy, like everyone else I spoke to in and around Noxon late last summer, was aware of the rumors that someone local with money was eyeing the vacant property on Noxon Avenue and might put up a bar where Toby's once stood. But it was spoken only in cautious terms. No one could see the future. In the meantime, fears about the future of the town were cropping up. When I first asked Jim Byler, chief of the Noxon Rural Fire District, how the town was doing, I got a laugh and a dry response.
Have you been downtown?
I did, I just saw it.
There wasn't much to see.
Byler, who was one of the first to the scene of the fire back in February, feared the worst for Noxon. If it wasn't for the school, which serves students across that part of Sanders County, there wouldn't be much reason for the town to exist. Without the grocery store, the restaurant, or the bar, people need to head to Sandpoint to stock up or go out, he says. Habits like that are hard to break.
I think people are just they're just gonna forget about it. Say, that is the new norm. There's nothing here, so we're going somewhere else. We go to Trout Creek or Sandpoint.
Samuel Overman, another firefighter with the rural district, says he can see that happening within his own home. His wife loved the Mercantile and Cafe. It was a great dinner date spot.
Well, my wife used to like to go to the Mercantile to eat, right? Quite often, and I'm like, let's go to Noxon. She's like, there's nothing in Noxon for me now. I don't want to go to Noxon. So, and I'm sure there's hundreds of people like that.
What's even more worrisome for Jim is that people have mostly stopped complaining. You used to hear someone griping about the lack of a restaurant or store. Now they're just used to going elsewhere.
Well, you think about it. If you live around here, well, we can go get something to eat. Well, let's go over to the hardware. Now that's all you have is a hardware. Nothing to eat. Well, let's go to Sandpoint then. We can do it all. And how you keep it. You got one choice here, and that's the hardware.
Johnson Hardware was one of the first stops Billy and I made together in the Noxon area. That's where he bumped into Doug Horner, a local builder, while he was walking the aisles. Doug wasn't so worried about people getting used to leaving town for supplies, for a warm meal, for a night of dancing. He told me that people in that part of Montana are already used to driving, but like a lot of people I met in Noxon, he wished that there was a local spot to get together. One thing we've been missing for a long time is a cafe. That was a place the old boys would get together, he tells me. A place to take your family, a cafe or restaurant type deal, a store that is stocked with all these necessities. While Laura and Kevin Johnson were home that day, their sons Austin and Aaron were minding the shop. Austin was listening in as Doug and Billy talked, a sly smile spreading across his face. There's plenty to do, he says. Go to a volleyball game, he says from the counter. Go to a football game. Where do you go for a steak? Where do you dance? Where do you meet a girl? Billy says straight back at him. Count the Johnson brothers among the more optimistic in town, or maybe just stoic. When I spoke with them, they said the loss of the other businesses was a big hit to the town, particularly Toby's Tavern. The pair said it housed most of Noxon's history inside its walls. While they miss getting referrals from the other stores on Noxon Avenue, business has been normal, they said. The first few days after the fire, they used to look out the windows of the hardware store to see someone heading down to where the bar once stood, before stopping and turning back. As for the loss of a communal gathering spot, they were understanding if unperturbed. It's a small town, Austin told me, and people were used to having those things around. They just want it to be like it was again. But there's nothing stopping a group of friends or a family or the community from getting together in other ways, he says. The mood at the Hereford Bar, about 4 miles west on the highway from Noxon, is defiant. Owner Kim Scythe bought the landmark in 2018 and reopened it several years later.
It started right in March during COVID, and it boomed. As soon as we opened the door, someone posted it on Facebook, and we got ran over. I was ready to close and lock the doors. And the lady across the street came over and helped us, deal with the crowds, and it was a lifesaver.
But the storied lodge caught fire in December 2020 and burnt down. Scythe was undeterred. They began rebuilding, a big 2-story log building, and opened the doors again before they even had a running toilet installed. In those early days, she told me, customers used a portable toilet. They hung tarps to keep the heat in. No one complained, she says.
We opened it up in December of 2021, the day we would lose our liquor license. It took us, we had a year to get it open, or we would have lost our liquor license. Okay. So it was that day. And we opened with no bathroom. It was a porta potty outside. It was horrible in the dead of winter.
Do what you got to do.
You do, yes.
Kim and her family, all of her adult children take turns helping managing the joint, began adding back amenities a little at a time. But in January 2024, about a month before the fire that claimed Noxon's business district, tragedy struck again. They're not sure how it started, but a second fire in the Hereford Bar burned it to the ground. Like the first, a cause was never found. Despite the obstacles, her insurance dropped her the day before the second fire, for example. Kim won't give up. These days, she operates the Hereford Bar out of a secondary building on the property. Gambrel-roofed building with a dirt parking lot facing the highway. It was a bar at some point prior in its history, which made the conversion easier. Before the fire, it was mostly used to house fireworks.
Let it
What's all?
process to rebuild. I just got to deal with a couple problems.
They don't need to know what them are. It's just good to hear that.
That's right. I'm rebuilding. The Hereford's still here. This isn't where I want to be, but it's working.
It's military.
It will. I know it will. I know it will.
And you sound like you're full of optimism.
I have to be. I'm coming back one way or another.
So when Kim heard about the fire in Noxon, particularly the loss of Toby's Tavern, her heart broke a little. It was a community museum as much as anything else, she says, and she knows that for its present owner, Toby's daughter Gail, it was like losing her father all over again.
The devastation is huge. I mean, you put everything into something and lose it. It's unreal. This is the first time I've ever been around fire was here.
Like a lot of people around Noxon, Kim is worried about the community's future. It's already picked up a nickname, she says, Tombstone. The loss of Noxon's businesses, combined with the failure of the bridge, has dampened spirits around the town.
The red shit burn. I think there's a lot of depression here. I think it's hurts, the morale there. I think it's really has. When the bridge went down, that was very, like, another catastrophic thing for everybody. So, and hopefully it's going to be an easy fix. But when they shut it down, it was a big deal.
But she's not giving up despite the fires. Although there remain financial hurdles ahead, Scythe plans on rebuilding. Noxon isn't down for the count either, she says.
And everybody's calling Noxon now Tombstone because they don't think that we can come back.
Back in Noxon, I get a chance to meet Kevin Johnson at the hardware store on my last morning in town. When I first popped in and met his sons, they warned me he likely wasn't coming in that day and probably wouldn't shoot over on my account. When I asked if that was because of a scheduling conflict or because he didn't want to speak with the press about the fire, they laughed. He's the unofficial town mayor, they said, and he knows it. Some days, he likes it. Other days, not so much.
Yes. Unelected town mayor. Yeah, unelected. And that's the way it's going to remain.
Kevin has seen the hole the fire left in the community manifest itself. During the summer months, confused visitors circled the town before heading back out to the highway, he says.
And even today, it's different. You got a quiet feel to town. School's going now, so you have traffic back flowing through town, but it is quiet. I was telling the bar owner the other day, I said, yeah, we still see motorcycle groups coming through in the summertime. They're coming off the highway, and you can hear them coming down. They come down, they circle, turn around, and go back out. And I know exactly what they were doing. They were coming off to stop at the bar, have a beer, burger, and go. And we've only had a couple of them pull in here that have said, hey, we've been on this ride before, and where's that restaurant at? Where's that bar at? And there have been people who've stopped in wondering, and they just, unless they didn't remember it there, but once you pointed out to them, it was pretty tough. So, yeah.
But as far as what the future might hold for Noxon and his 3 vacant lots, I'm not on the list of people Kevin is willing to speculate with. It's private property, he tells me, and those property owners can do with it what they like, what makes sense for them. He understands, though, that the questions are coming from a place of concern, and what he might want to see go up in the place of the Angry Beaver, the Mercantile and Cafe, and Toby's Tavern doesn't really matter all that much.
If I had a quarter for every time somebody said, what do you think's going to happen with the town, I probably could have rebuilt the store twice. Because, a lot of people, people care. That's why they do that. But there has been, what do you think, Kevin? And really what I think about what's going to happen down here doesn't matter because it's someone else's property. So but no, it's always going to happen. So as long as we're in the business, people are always going to ask us, and if it wears on us, that's okay. We only have to do this for 20 more years.
I did ask him, though, if he was worried at all for his business. After all, several of the people I spoke to were concerned that those who live in and around Noxon might get used to running to Sandpoint for their goods. They might stop dropping by the local hardware store if they need to cross into Idaho anyway. Kevin waved that away.
Zero concern about that. If the bridge closed, that might change things. But, as far as things are right now, it's really regular. It's business as normal for all of our...
We'll get that off there. Thank you.
It's the vendor side that's different for us. Because, customers aren't leaving town with 28,000 pounds worth of freight that they need to cross the bridge with. It's vendors that are coming into town with possibly an abundant amount of freight that we have to make arrangements for to come into town. But as far as the customers, we've got a very loyal customer base. They know us well. Oftentimes they don't want to drive to Sandpoint. They don't want to drive to wherever it might be to get their products. And so I have no concerns about that. Just a matter of keeping that bridge open to the public so that we can get our kids to school and get supplies for the entire town. Hopefully a grocery store, a bar, and a restaurant someday.
This is Jordan Van of Van Law Firm. At Van Law, we understand how life can change in an instant. Whether you've been affected by a fire, an accident, or any other disaster, you don't have to go through it alone. We're here to help victims rebuild and recover, from personal injuries to property damage and financial struggles. Your rights matter, and we're ready to fight for the compensation you deserve. If you've been injured or affected, we'll work tirelessly to address your medical bills, lost wages, and pain and suffering. Our experienced office will guide you every step of the way. Reach out to Van Law today for a free consultation. Call us now at 406-VAN-LAW. That is 406-826-6529. or you can find us online at vanlawfirm.com. Van Law. When it feels like everything is lost, we'll help you find your way forward.